Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Bringing Protected Bike Lanes to Charlotte. This is one of our Shifting Gears events, and this is our first time doing it virtually. And I'm Siboney Winter, I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator, and I'm happy to have you all here today. And I'm excited to be talking about the bike lanes that we're gonna bring, and also just I'm really happy to have all these wonderful guest speakers who have great information to share, and I hope you enjoy. Our agenda for today is as follows. We're going to do a bit of a Sustain Charlotte intro with Eric, one of our staff here, and then we're going to go into some info about the Uptown CycleLink with Will and Scott, and then we're going to have the Plaza protected bike lanes be discussed by Renee Bradley, and we're going to talk a bit about cycling in Lakeview, which is one of the local Charlotte neighborhoods, and the need for safe infrastructure with Jamall. And then I'm going to talk about expanding the definition of safety for cyclists. We're going to have a Q&A to follow all of that. So if you have any questions while we're going through the different topics, you can just put that in the chat box, and when we go to the Q&A, we'll answer those questions as they've come in order. And then we'll follow that up with the next steps. So I'm gonna hand it off to Eric Zaverl, and he is our Bike and Walk Program Coordinator. He's wonderful, and I'm ready for him to share. I think.
All righty, thank you. I'm unmuted. Yep, I was just about to start without it unmuted. So thank you, Siboney, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us. Looks like we got, that says 54 participants, so that's a pretty good crowd we have here. So thank you for all taking time out to join us tonight. Siboney, you could go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. Sustain Charlotte, has been advocating and will continue to advocate and work with the city and neighborhood groups and other partners to push cycling and scootering and walking to more places for more people in a safer way. And then some of the stuff on the screen is just some of the ways that we've been advocating for cycling in the past with some groups, programs that we've had with Shifting Gears and demo projects like Open Streets, and partnering with the Plaza neighborhood and the Stroll and Roll folks, and getting the Plaza protected lanes put in place. We also do a lot of work behind the scenes with the city to help push policy and regulations forward, like the streets map, and trying to get the best possible streets for Charlotte. You go to the next slide. And then here's some of the other programs we've done, like demo projects during Biketoberfest and on the 5th and 6th cycle track. These projects really help show the community what could this bike infrastructure that could be used for so many people really feels like. And those usually last, at least for a day, if not a whole week. Those stay live for the people to be able to experience them, whether it's for just a fun bike ride or a commute. Some of the latest items that we've been working on is like the rail trail bridge that makes a connection between South End and Uptown, and the shared streets during these COVID pandemic, where we really could use the space that reduced traffic from cars weren't really using, and turning that over to space for people to walk, bike, jog, whatever it is, just to be able to have more space and be able to get where they need to be. So those, just to touch upon some of the things that Sustain Charlotte has worked for in the past, and we can't wait to continue working with neighborhoods and the city, especially on the Uptown CycleLink, and making connections not just from Uptown, but throughout the whole city of Charlotte. So thank you. And I would like to turn it over to Scott Curry, introduce him. He is the Active Transportation Coordinator for the Charlotte Department of Transportation, and also Will Washam, who is the Bicycle Program Coordinator. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I think, Will, you're going to share your screen for our presentation, right? So why don't I go ahead and I'll introduce myself while you're doing that, and then Will can take it from there. So we are thrilled to be with you all tonight. This is an exciting night for us. We have been working on a lot of really exciting bike network things for the city over the last 4 years to get us to the point we're at today. We have some slides to run through with you on the bike network plans for Uptown. Like Eric said, my name's Scott Curry. I'm the active transportation coordinator for the city of Charlotte. Until my bedroom became my office, I was also an Uptown bike commuter. I'd ride my bike into work every day. And so it's good to be among friends in the cycling community. And like I said, very excited to share some things with you tonight. So I'll kick it over to Will.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everyone. I'm Will Washam. I'm one of Scott's colleagues at CDOT. I'm the bicycle program coordinator. I've been with CDOT a little over 2 years. And, you know, one of the main reasons why I wanted to join the team here at the city was to continue this great work. As Eric mentioned, there's been a lot of work in the past few years to continue to advance bicycling in Charlotte. And the Uptown CycleLink is definitely one of the most exciting projects that we've got in the works. So with that, I'll jump straight into our presentation this evening. Here at CDOT, we really are managers of public space. Streets are our greatest public space resource. If you added up all of our public space within the city of Charlotte, including parks, schools, greenways, nature preserves, cemeteries, city-owned properties, all of that combined is still 13 square miles less than the amount of public space that we have in our streets. So we can't really afford to think about streets as single use as a public resource. Currently, we use our streets mainly to move cars and to store cars. And, you know, with a change in thinking and as Charlotte continues to grow, we really have to understand that all of our streets are indeed a public resource that we need to use to encourage equity and affordability within our transportation network and within our community. Altogether, we have just over 250,000 people that we know don't drive in Charlotte, and that's about 1/3 of our population. It's enough people to fill Bank of America Stadium 3.5 times. And for those that do not drive, that are too young, that are too old, or do not have access to a vehicle, transportation choices are the key for mobility, independence, and quality of life. Building a city of active transportation choices is really building a city that offers more social equity and economic mobility. So 76% of people in Charlotte drive alone to work. And almost that same percentage, 73%, we know would like to drive less. We know this through biannual surveys that we do through the city. But historically, our community has not been built in a way that supports different transportation choices. Likewise, we also know through our surveys here at the city that the vast majority of people would like to see streets designed to accommodate and and even prioritize walking, biking, and transit. During these times that we've all been enduring with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've all seen a surge in people walking, biking, and choosing to be out and about using active travel to get exercise and also as a primary mode of transportation. And so seeing this growth is really showing the demand that we have if we can construct connected and comfortable transportation networks for bicycling. We've also got great resident support through a variety of programs that the city has been enacting for the past few years, one of those being Open Street 704. That's our signature program to promote active living and to promote walking and bicycling as a transportation alternative and also as a way to go out and see your community, to build rapport and community with your neighbors. In the past 4 years, we've reached over 160,000 people through our Open Streets program with last year being our biggest year yet, with one of our Open Streets program having over 30,000 people attending. So we know that there is demand here in Charlotte, and that's really what drives us as we move forward projects like the Uptown CycleLink. Scott?
Great, thanks, Will. So the sum of all that is that we know we can't keep widening our roads to deal with mobility demand in the future. So we have to broaden our thinking about how we provide and build transportation choices for our residents. We know from studies as recent as last month that peer cities like Indianapolis, Minneapolis, Seattle, San Francisco have started implementing downtown bike networks that have been really successful, and data is coming back showing that it's increasing economic vitality. And even in cases where motor vehicle lanes are reallocated to become bike space, those cities are seeing food sales and employment go up. And so there's lots of reasons to do this just beyond transportation choices. There's public health and sustainability reasons, as well as economic development reasons. Well, if you could go to the next slide. Another reason why the need for on-street facilities is such a pressing one has to do with climate resilience. And so we wanted to share some recent GIS analysis work that we have done with folks at the city about the impact of rain events on our bike network in Charlotte. So as Will goes through this series of slides, it's going to be tough, obviously, to see over Zoom, but look down in the bottom right corner where that red circle is. We've got about 190 miles in our bikeway network, but during rain events, you can see with each sort of successive severity of rain event, moving from a 10-year event all the way to a 100 or 500-year event, we lose a lot of our bike network. And that's largely because we're dependent on our greenways. Our greenways are a fantastic amenity and transportation choice. But for those of you who are cyclists and use greenways a lot to commute, you know that during even a minor rain event, your commute is impacted. And so part of this story for us is also about climate resilience. You can imagine if we lost between 13 and 24% of our roadway network every time it rained, how difficult that would be for folks in the city to function. And we want to build a more resilient bike network as well. So our existing network, I mentioned, we've got roughly 190 miles of bikeways in the city. That's everything from greenways to signed bike routes to protected bike lanes to the rail trail. A lot of that network was built through an opportunistic approach where we were repaving a street and noticed that we had enough room to pave a bike lane. And so when the street was repaved, we got bike lanes on it. Sort of as a result of that opportunistic approach, we have a lot of really great segments of bike lanes, but most of it is standard bike lanes and signed bike routes. And that as you can imagine, there's still a lot of gaps in that bike network. And really the focus of what we'll be talking about with you today is this last bullet point, which is the fact that we currently have 0 continuous bike facilities across Uptown Charlotte, which is, we know, our most important bike commuting destination in the city. And so this is what a lot of that network looks like. It's a strip of paint on the road. It's door zone bike lanes sometimes where if there's a car parked nearby and someone opens their door, the bike lane goes away. We have heard very clearly from our residents and through the planning that we've done around our bike network in the last decade that this is not the type of facility that's going to inspire more people to ride in Charlotte. And so expectations we know have changed around what bike facilities should look like. And we've developed some key principles for how we are approaching the build out of our bike network. One of those key principles is to try to connect gaps. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of segments of great bike infrastructure in the city, but a lot of it is also disconnected. And so leveraging existing infrastructure to fill in those gaps and create continuous corridors is a big focus of our work. Another key principle is to start in and build the network out. That's how we built our roadway network. That's how the city developed. That's how we feel like we can be best equipped to tie together our bike network in a meaningful way and also do some things in Uptown that make it much more attractive for folks to commute by bike. And then that third principle is to focus on AAA facilities that work for all ages and abilities. We want folks like this little guy in the picture to be able to ride comfortably on our bike network. We want your grandparents to be able to ride comfortably on our bike network. And if we do that, we know that everybody in between is going to be comfortable riding on our bike network. So those are the principles that we've really embraced as we have jumped into the planning of things like the Uptown CycleLink over the last 4 years.
And speaking of that planning, really the foundation of where we are today came from our Uptown Connects plan, which was really the city's first concentrated effort to develop a plan for a connected all ages and abilities bicycle network. It also happened to be in our Uptown, as Scott mentioned, which is our highest draw for bicycle commuters. It's the largest activity center in the state of North Carolina. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this plan and participated in the public input. So during the Uptown Connects plan, we came out with some recommendations for a priority network that was called the Ward Loop. That priority network included 4 corridors that were to connect all 4 wards of Uptown Charlotte, as well as our major greenway systems on each side. The flagship project from the study was the 6th Street cycle track, which uses pieces of 7th Street, all of 6th Street, and a piece of 5th Street to seamlessly connect the Little Sugar Creek Greenway and the Irwin Creek Greenway. However, 6th Street was not the only project, and it's not the only piece of our priority network, which we're now presenting today as the Uptown CycleLink. As Scott mentioned, in order to really achieve an effective all ages abilities bike network, we need to start in and build out. Once we have a connected network within our largest activity center, we know that we'll be able to provide meaningful connections to other areas of the city. And when those connections are made, they'll be even more impactful. And that's why we think that this project is our #1 priority for the city's bicycle program, and that can truly be transformative as we look to develop our bikeway network out into our surrounding neighborhoods. It's also for e-scooters as well. And so when we moved to look at the rest of this priority network from Uptown Connects, we saw some similar efforts in other cities that had great success with creating a unifying brand around their priority network. So we worked with a marketing consultant. We looked at some peer cities that have had great success, as Scott was saying earlier, in implementing Uptown networks. And that is where we came up with our brand, the Uptown CycleLink. And this is something that is for Charlotte to own, for Charlotte to embrace, and for Charlotte to celebrate as we work on this project and as we continue to deliver the 6th Street project and the other corridors that make up the Uptown CycleLink. So speaking of all those other corridors, this is really exciting to share with everyone tonight. This priority network has always been within the Uptown Connects plan, but we're just so excited to have a brand that we can own, which is the Uptown CycleLink. And we've actually already made some great progress on developing this network. What you see on the screen right here are the corridors within the Uptown CycleLink. The green lines represent existing all ages and abilities infrastructure. And then the Uptown CycleLink network itself, you'll see it represented in yellow and in blue. The corridors in yellow are corridors that are already funded for construction. So as you can see, we're well on our way to developing this network. We look forward to bringing the entire 6th Street project into construction later in this calendar year. The corridors that you see in blue, these are corridors that are in feasibility design right now that we're working to tee up for future funding. We also wanted to share some renderings with you guys this evening. These are illustrative purposes that are showing what the CycleLink can look like in some of the most recognizable streets in Charlotte. This is Mint Street. We're standing on the sidewalk of BB&T Ballpark, looking over at the beautiful Romare Bearden Park. Mint Street is one of the corridors for the Uptown CycleLink. And we just can't wait until the day when we're able to install this facility and bring Mint Street in as one of our all ages and abilities network corridors in Uptown. Here we're looking at College Street, which is becoming a very important corridor for how folks will get into and around Uptown by bicycle. Of course, as Eric mentioned earlier in his introduction, the city is designing the rail trail bridge over I-277 from South End into Uptown right now. And once you get into Uptown, College Street is going to become a very important connection to the rest of the Uptown CycleLink network. And so we're standing looking at the convention center right now. And what we're showing here, this is a concept of what the College Street streetscape could be. Of course, we've got the two-way separated bike lane comprising the Uptown CycleLink network. And this is a concept for improving the street for transit as well. CATS has begun to use College Street to bring in their express service buses. So as we move these projects further along into design, we want to be cognizant of all the various modes of travel on the streets so we can improve these corridors for not only cycling, but for our rapid transit as well.
So just a quick word on some of the exciting stuff Will went through. I want to make sure it wasn't lost on anybody. One of the big things that we have to share with y'all is that close to half of this Uptown CycleLink network is already in progress, and we feel confident we have the funding at this point to pursue it. So that's obviously a big deal for us. Also, just a quick word on the branding. We knew from conversations with folks like you all that Ward Loop was sort of something that had a lukewarm reception from the bike community. We hired a marketing consultant to really dive in on how we might talk about this and tell our story. Uptown CycleLink sort of gives a nod to the Link's light rail system. We want folks to understand that this is a viable transportation mode into and out of Center City. The logo also has the 4 links on it, representing the 4 different primary parts of the networks through Uptown. So just sort of a glimpse into kind of some of that thinking behind the logo. And then obviously the green primary colors. When the network's installed, you're going to see a lot of the green bicycle pavement markings, and that'll be part of the way that you can recognize that you're on the Uptown CycleLink. So we're excited about the brand. We're excited about the level of work that's already in progress, and we're most excited to be able to write it when parts of this start opening in 2021. So Will, jumping back to the other slide, what this really does for us is it transforms our greenway corridors that lead into Uptown from corridors that serve a primary recreational purpose today to corridors that we think more of our residents will use for transportation infrastructure. And so I wanted to close with something that CDOT actually did a couple of years ago, which was called our One Less Trip study. We were interested as a part of our Charlotte Walks and Bikes plans to know what would the impact on our residents and our city look like if we could build a Charlotte of vibrant urban places and active transportation choices that made it possible for folks to take just one less trip by car each day. Not asking people to give up their cars, but just one less trip by a car each day. And so these are some of the things that we would see if we did that. The average Charlottean takes about somewhere between 3 and 4 trips a day. So if we lowered that by 1 trip a day, we'd have less congestion. We'd have about 500,000 fewer cars on our roads. Collectively, we'd save over $1 billion in fuel costs, vehicle maintenance costs, and time spent in traffic. That's about $4,200 per household. Air quality would improve. We'd all spend a lot less time in our cars. We know that it would improve public health. People would be more productive and energized at work and school, and we would have fewer traffic deaths. So I think that's a good way to close, just to reiterate that this does a lot more for us than putting fancy new bike infrastructure on Uptown streets. We feel like this is really a transformative way to think about mobility in Uptown. over the next generation of transportation in Charlotte.
Thank you, Scott and Will. That was wonderful. And just a heads up for some people who may have trickled in, we are answering all the questions at the end in our Q&A. And so if whoever has the screen, do you mind unsharing? And I'm going to transition into our next speaker, Renee Bradley. And give me one moment.
Siboney, while you're doing that, I wanted to echo something that I saw pop up in the chat box, which was a thank you to Councilmember Eggleston and others on City Council for supporting this work. And I know Councilmember Eggleston has been a big supporter of our bike program and has showed up to the Open Streets events. And so we appreciate folks like you. We also appreciate our elected officials for giving us guidance on this work.
So I am now going to pass the baton to Renee Bradley. She is the Stroll and Roll Plaza Midwood co-chair, and Renee has served as a board member and president of the Plaza Midwood Neighborhood Association, and she has a lot to share with you, so I'm going to pass it on.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Renee. I'm here to talk to you about the Plaza protected bike lanes. And I want to start by saying I'm really excited about all the cool stuff we just heard from Scott and Will. That's definitely something that we've been hoping to see for a while, and it's exciting to see it all coming together. So thanks, guys. So for my presentation, I wanted to give you a little bit more from a community perspective as to what the bike lane has done for our community and how we got here and how their community really participated in the process from the beginning. So I'm going to go to the next slide and start us off with a really cool video that CDOT made to show you the before and after. So when I start the video, so that you can see this project, it does have music with it. So if you've got a headset in, you may want to just turn your volume down just so that it doesn't blast in your ears. But anyways, here we go. So, hopefully, okay. All right. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. Hopefully that gave you a really good feeling for how the project really transformed the street. And this slide kind of gives you a quick overview of what changes were made as a part of the project. It's a 1 mile stretch on a residential street in the middle of the Plaza Midwood Historic District. And the project itself included 1 car lane being converted on each side into a protected bike lane, So hopefully you easily noticed that in the video. A couple other things that were included in the project were 3 new pedestrian crossings where new landing areas were built within the median. And also signal improvements were made at the 2 intersections along the mile. And overall, the cost was around $500,000, but the cool thing was that that was what the city had already allocated for repaving and maintenance budget. And so that really helped us be able to make this happen so quickly. The diagram behind is kind of the final design documents that were drawn up by CDOT as a part of the process, and anyone can go look at those online within charlotte.gov site. All right. So how is the community involved in this? We really, I think, were a big part of the process from the beginning, and I think that's what really made it turn out into such a good project, and really something that the community is excited about now. So a few things that we did to get this going, and something that maybe you can do too in your own neighborhoods, is that we started out with a petition. It was very simple. Anyone can set that up on change.org. And we got this idea by following the lead of Sustain Charlotte and another project that was completed in our area or started in our area for the Parkwood street conversion. So that's a project that was started way ahead of us, and we really learned a lot from how Sustain Charlotte and those neighborhoods got that going. So, you know, we just followed their example and decided to start a petition of our own for our own neighborhood. Once we gauged the community interest through that petition, we had about 1,000 signatures pretty quickly. We also decided to engage the surrounding neighborhood leaders to really make sure that what we were proposing was something that all the neighborhoods around us would like as well, and to get their official support and participation in the process. We also, throughout the entire process, starting with the petition, we really went out and did a lot of encouragement and education throughout the community. So we hosted and organized and hosted many group rides over a couple years' time, and they weren't just recreational for fun group rides. What we tried to do was show people that they could use bikes to get around, to get to school and get to work. So we led rides to school with families and their children. And we led rides, and actually still are leading a Friday ride as part of the Freewheelin' Fridays bike commuting group. We started our own bike commuting every Friday from Plaza Midwood into Uptown. So really trying to encourage and show people that they can use their bikes to get around as transportation, not just for fun. And then we did a lot of education as far as we went to lots of neighborhood meetings, and especially the Plaza Midwood ones. We presented the ideas and the benefits behind bike lanes, and really tried to spread the message. We also had a Facebook page set up to really be able to communicate more frequently with everyone as well. And then we started to build a relationship with CDOT and started working on some smaller projects first. So a couple of those include simple things like signage at the Central and Plaza corner. We worked with CDOT and the Vision Zero team to add some signage to warn cars to watch out for pedestrians there. We also worked on a change to the signals at Thomas and Pecan as you're crossing Central, so that an all-walk phase could be implemented. So that allows pedestrians to walk without any cars moving at all. It gives them time to move in all directions. So little things like that helped us learn and build those relationships. And then we finally, got to try it out with a demo. We were really lucky enough that Open Streets event was already coming to our neighborhood, and the CDOT leaders and the Open Streets event leaders were on board with our vision and decided to try it out as a pilot project, and linked it to that event and that event funding. So that really got things going and allowed us to test out the idea, gather statistics, and proved that it would be a successful project. One of the biggest things we learned from that was how drastically the car speeds were reduced when we added the bike lanes. So that was a huge safety improvement for our neighborhood. And then ultimately that project allowed it to get approved by the city. And then one of the keys that I think really helped the project be successful is that we had a really close partnership with the city and the CDOT team through the design and execution. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about now that the things that were important to us in the design from a community perspective. And I'm excited to say that CDOT really took our feedback throughout the process and did a lot of meetings with us, reviewing the designs. We even went out on site and walking and biking in the area to really refine things. So that partnership really helped things along. And as we went through the process, the things that were really important from a neighborhood and community perspective were, I always like to say, connectivity, connectivity, comfort, and convenience. Those are the three kind of C's that we were looking for. We wanted to make sure that those were all met in the design, and I think they were. So first, you see the connectivity is key here. You can see how the bike lanes on the plaza were connected to our business district, which has all kinds of goods and services, grocery stores, restaurants, shops, all kinds of things that we are hoping people would actually stop driving to and ride their bikes to instead and walk to instead. It also connects to so many different neighborhoods. You can see in the diagram on either side of the yellow line there. We've got Belmont, Villa Heights, Elizabeth and Chantilly, and Noda just beyond Villa Heights. So lots of neighborhoods besides Plaza Midwood are benefiting from this street. And the new bike lanes. And then also what I'm really excited about from a bigger picture perspective is that it will in the future connect to transit and greenway. So once the Parkwood Street conversion is completed, and that is already funded and in progress, our bike lanes on the plaza will connect to the Parkwood bike lanes, and then that will get folks to the Cross Charlotte Trail as well as the Parkwood Light Rail Station. Another big factor, like I mentioned, was comfort, and safety goes right along with that. Some of the things that we implemented in this design were extra wide lanes, and I think that's something that makes people feel super comfortable. It's a 6-foot wide bike lane and 4-foot buffer zone. So that just really gives you room to breathe, and you don't feel like the cars are super close to you. So I think that is really something that's playing into the success of this. Another big factor on the comfort and safety perspective is the concrete islands that are at each corner. That really protects the cyclists from the cars turning right, so that there's a little bit of a barrier there. And then the vertical elements like the paddles and the planters that go along the entire stretch, they definitely give another feeling of comfort for the cyclist, and they also are there as kind of a indicator to the drivers to slow down. There's some, that there's something else next to you. It's not just another car lane. So I think having those visual cues for the drivers really helps it all function together well and helps the cyclists feel more comfortable. The other thing is we wanted to make sure it was convenient and inviting. And so I love these elements that CDOT was able to add. At the Belvedere intersection, they added these left turn boxes, and there's lots of green paint throughout the whole mile in the different conflict zones. But the left turn boxes are really nice because it just points out to drivers that, hey, bikes are allowed here. They are something to watch out for. They're allowed here, and they're a part of this street as well that we all have to navigate on together. And it gives the cyclist a safe spot to wait for the light to turn. And then bike signal, that is super cool. If you haven't tried it yet, it's at Central and the Plaza when you're trying to cross over into the business district. And it's really convenient because the push button to trigger that bike signal is right there by the bike lane. So you don't have to, like in a normal intersection, I would always have to go up onto the sidewalk, get off my bike, or lean over and try to reach the ped button just to get the normal pedestrian signal to turn on. But with our own specific bike signal and push button, it really makes it super convenient and inviting for cyclists. And then the coolest thing as well is the bike leaning rails. They are, if you haven't ever seen them, definitely go check it out. But basically they allow the cyclist while they're waiting at the intersection to put their hand and their foot on those rails and just lean on that and not have to dismount their bike while they're waiting. So it's just a convenience that makes bikes feel welcome there. So once we got through all the design and it was implemented, it was a really exciting opening day that really, you know, made us feel great about all the work that was done. And we had about 1,000 attendees, city leaders, and people from all over different neighborhoods come in to check it out. And it was just a really fun day that I think showed us that all the work that we had done really paid off, and that the community was excited and really in support of it and ready to get to using it. So, and another way, now that we've kind of gotten into the normal mode of this actually being implemented, we wanted to start measuring the success. Or CDOT really did all the work here, obviously, but we were excited and really wanted to find out what these numbers would be as well. So you can see here from these charts and the numbers over a 3-week period where the bike counts were measured. There were a total of over 2,800 rides on the lanes. So I thought that was a really big number, considering, you know, not that many people bike normally in Charlotte. And so I think this showed how much people loved it. And then the daily average was over 100 rides per day. And then there was a high daily count of 260 rides on one of the sections. So people are certainly using these lanes, and you can see the daily usage in those charts on the right. And then what I think shows even more success is just to walk out onto the plaza at any point in the day, any time that I ever walk out there. There are always people using the lanes. You know, unless it's like a crazy thunderstorm or something and pouring down rain, I always see people out using it. And the coolest thing is how I see people of all ages and abilities using the lanes. It's such a mixture of types of people. And I think it just goes to show that, hey, the mission was accomplished on making this comfortable for all ages and abilities, because we see so many kids, so many people that are kind of more beginning cyclists, people on beach cruisers, people with their groceries on their baskets. It really has completely transformed the feel of the road, and people are using it to get around and to exercise. And I think it's just completely changed the quality of life in the neighborhood, and especially on this street. So finally, the coolest thing that came out of this, in addition to this amazing transformation and people learning to get around by bike and use the street in a new way, the community was inspired to even do more on this stretch of road. They actually came together and have now started a new initiative called the Midwood Mile, in which we're kind of working together to transform the street over time to add additional beautification elements like landscaping, as well as art elements and placemaking like benches and bike racks. So there's this is a brand new initiative that really was inspired because of the bike lanes and all the street changes that happened. Now the community wants to take it to the next level. And so the first project that's we've completed under this new Midwood Mile initiative is that we planted 8,000 tulips along several sections of the median. and those were in bloom early this spring, right around the perfect timing when the whole stay-at-home orders came into play. So it couldn't have come at the better time, and kind of added a bright spot during a crazy time. So that was really cool, and hundreds of volunteer hours have been put in to make that happen. So you really know that the community is excited and wants to come out and put more work into making it a beautiful and fun place to be. So that project is going to continue. We've actually got another project lined up to do a bike lane mural within one of the blocks within this bike lane. So I'm excited and hoping that's going to get implemented, at least the first part of it, hopefully later this year. And we've got a lot of support from local businesses and our Arts and Science Council grants and things like that to try to make it happen. But it just shows that when you change the street and you bring people to it and bring new life to it, it really can inspire even more than you ever imagined. So what's next for us? From a community perspective, we really want to continue partnering with the city to build out even a bigger bike network and safer streets all around our neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. In fact, we actually have another petition started for what we call the Upper Plaza. That is kind of an unsafe street, not really welcoming at all for pedestrians and cyclists. And I know CDOT knows that very well. It's on the list from a Vision Zero perspective. But we'd like to, try to continue out that network and make the streets safer for all. And hopefully what we're doing will inspire other neighborhoods. That would be my biggest wish of all, is that other neighborhoods would see this and start advocating for the same things in their area. So if anybody wants to get involved or learn more, you can always follow our Stroll and Roll Plaza Midwood Facebook page or message us there, and we'd be happy to help get you started with that. So thank you.
Thank you. That was great. And if you can just continue sharing your screen, I can move on, Renee, to the, here we go. And now we are going to move on to Jamall Kinard's section, and he is the Executive Director of the Lakeview Neighborhood Alliance, and he's going to be briefly sharing a bit about the benefits of what bike lanes can do for his community.
Definitely. Thank you all for allowing me to be on the call tonight. As you mentioned, my name is Jamall Kinard, Executive Director for Lakeview Neighborhood Alliance, and I'm just going to speak a few words about what we're doing here in Lakeview. I know you see Lakewood area at the top of that, so that's a little dated. We just changed the neighborhood name back to Lakeview to honor the history of the residents that's currently there today. That name was very near and dear to them. So to begin with our organizing, that was the first thing that they required of me before we did anything else. So I had to honor that. So they didn't want to confuse you, asking Jamall why you keep saying Lakeview, but Lakewood sitting right there on that page. So just a reference for that. But what we're looking to do, there are 5 major areas that plague the Black community. And I think we all have seen one of the major areas of police brutality with recent events that just happened in the country. So my heart goes out to the family of George Floyd and everybody that's been affected. So I want to start off with that. But the other 4 areas that affect the Black communities, and that what we're seeing right now happening in Lakeview is gentrification and displacement, miseducation, mass incarceration, access to wealth and wealth building opportunities. And the bike lanes that we're talking about right now kind of goes right along with gentrification. We have plenty of young men and young women and either older women older people who use transportation, whether it's a bike, walking, or we have few disabled residents as well who are in need of these bike lanes as well. But what we're seeing is a certain fear comes along with that. So as me organizing with the residents and asking where would we want to have bike lanes? The number one thing I hear from residents is that, Jamall, when we bring bike lanes into the neighborhood, they're going to come and try to take our neighborhood. They believe that if we are to beautify our neighborhood and make things more accessible, my residents have a fear that the neighborhood will be quickly gentrified and the whole dynamics of the neighborhood would change. So I want to bring to the attention that this is something that we want to do, but we don't want to be afraid to do it, because we want the people who are here, who are advocating for this change, to be able to enjoy this change that's happening. So what we're proposing is we have bike lanes along the Roswell Ferry Road. If you look at the perimeter where the blue line is drawn, at the top and on the right side, the top is Roswell Ferry Road, which is the main road in the neighborhood that creates access to neighborhoods like Smallwood, Biddleville, Seaverville, all the way up to 5 Points and Wesley Heights, leading into Uptown where it connects to Beatty's Ford. Also on Norwood Drive on the right side there, that's another main street in the Lakeview neighborhood that leads to Tuckasegee on up to Freedom Drive and things of that nature. So we would love to have bike lanes on those two streets. Right now, those are two main streets that people use for transportation when riding bikes. But with that comes a certain danger, because the bike's path, that if we were to have it, we need those to be separate from sidewalks and from the road, to create accessible ways to get to and fro work, or just to enjoy a nice bike ride for exercise, or to get out and enjoy some fresh air. Also, two other main roads in the neighborhood is Lakewood Avenue and Kalen Street. We have a park. If you see the open, right there on the right side of the open area where it says Lakeview Center, there's a Lakewood Park that sits behind that center. Also, that's going to be an area where the Greenway, the Stewart Creek Greenway, is going to be extended here in the next year or so. So we also want to get residents in the habit of using that Greenway for transportation with bikes and scooters, and a way to get uptown without having to be on busy streets. So that's some of the things we want to do, but we kind of want to make sure we just acknowledge the reason why we don't have bike lanes right now. We think it's a tremendous distribution of resources in this area. So many times it seems like black cyclists or black bike riders are overlooked, and we got to ask ourselves, why is that happening? And why does it seem like only bike lanes come to neighborhood after they're being gentrified or after they've been targeted for gentrification? And let me be clear, I'm not proposed to renewal and gentrification. What I'm opposed to is the displacement that comes as a result of the gentrification. So as we're organizing here in Lakeview for the change we want to have happen, I want Miss Hattie, I want Miss Priscilla, I want Miss Vivian, the people that have been living here and homeowners for 20-some odd years, to enjoy the change after they have endured so many difficult years of living in Lakeview. So that's what we're advocating for in this right here. So that's some context around what we're trying to do in Lakeview, why we're trying to do it. We are advocating to bring in three main things into our neighborhood: economic mobility hub, community center, and affordable housing. And while doing that, we know the park is going to be renovated. That's one of our main things. The Stewart Creek Greenway is going to be extended. And while doing that, we want to make sure residents here are prepared for that change so that they can stay here and enjoy that change. So the slogan that we live by here in Lakeview, as the Mahat say, we want to make history now. We want to make history now together. So I thank Sustain Charlotte for allowing us to have this platform to speak, tell a little bit of our story, and hopefully we can do similar things that will happen in Plaza Midwood. But hopefully the people that's here currently doesn't have to leave. They can be here to enjoy that change as well. So that's my time. I'm not going to take up too much. We can have some Q&A at the end. So thank you, Meg. Thank you, Sydney. And thank you, everybody at Sustain Charlotte team, for allowing me to be a part of this call.
Thank you, Jamall. I really appreciate your insight. And I just want to let you know that people on Facebook Live are loving your segment. So just wanted to give you that little, And I'm gonna quickly transition into mine. And so I know we're a little short on time, but I think we can't talk about communities and transportation without talking about safety and acknowledging the issues with safety for people of color, because it is a privilege to be able to learn about racism rather than experiencing it yourself. And as a community filled with allies and cyclists, it's important that we acknowledge that racial profiling is an issue on a global scale. And as many of you know, Ahmaud Arbery was shot jogging in his own community. And that is just another instance where issues of race and discrimination and police brutality cause death of civilians. And if you look at this infographic, I'm not sure how visible it is to read. This is from Nebraska, and this is from 2002 to 2013. This is just some further information showing that there is data behind the fact that racial profiling does directly impact Black drivers at higher rates than white drivers. And that is also an issue because I looked for a really long time to find this type of information on people of color cycling, and I couldn't find any infographics. And that just goes to show that there needs to be more work done on these issues that are very prevalent to my community. And I also want to let it be known that following up with this presentation, I'm going to be sending some additional resources for anyone, if any allies want to be aware of ways that you can be more involved in understanding the issues of transportation safety for people of color. And I am going to go to the next slide. I was going to read this statement, but I think for the sake of time, and I really want to value our Q&A, I am going to attach this full statement to a follow-up email so everyone can read it on their own time. But I just really want everyone to be aware that it is a really prevalent issue because we can have as many beautiful bike lanes all over the country, but if it's not safe for people of color to bike, then it's not going to matter. So we really need to step up as an entire community and make sure that everyone is safe to ride. And I'm gonna pass the baton to Meg Fensel, who is our program director.
Thank you so much, Siboney, for those comments. And we recognize that there's still a lot of work to be done in our community to ensure that all people are safe on the street while walking and biking, and that the streets won't be safe for all people to walk and bike until they're safe for Black and brown people to walk and bike. Just as a little bit of background, Sustain Charlotte serves on the city's Vision Zero task force, and the city set a Vision Zero goal several years ago to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries by 2030. And last year, 28 people were killed in traffic collisions while walking, and one person was killed in a traffic collision while biking. And we recognize that drivers speed, they run red lights and stop signs, they fail to yield to pedestrians and give enough space to cyclists to safely pass. And so we think that it's very important to also realize that there's critical work that's being done by CMPD to play a role in Vision Zero and to strike a balance to ensure that everyone is safe, both from traffic as well as from personal violence and racial profiling in the enforcement of our laws. So I just want you to know that Sustain Charlotte is listening and learning. We want to hear from you. And we are committed to advancing racial equity and ensuring that institutional racism and systemic racism that are built into land use and transportation policies and practices come to an end. So please know that we are very committed to continuing to work on this and eliminating that very huge barrier to people of color who walk and bike. So I just want to share a few quick ways that you can support protected bike lanes and safe bike and pedestrian infrastructure. First, use the great protected bike lanes that are out there if they're in your community or if you're in the parts of town that you're able to use them. Also, talk to your city council members, both your district representatives and the at-large representatives and your neighborhood leaders, and ask them to support bike infrastructure. I want to thank Council Member Larkin Eggleston from District 1 for joining us tonight. And thank you for everything that you do to support safe cycling infrastructure in our city, Councilmember Eggleston. Also, make bike friends. If you aren't familiar with riding a bike or you don't have anyone to ride with, go over to weeklyrides.com. This is a local organization that has put together a great list of bike rides from beginner to advanced. If you haven't been on a bike in a long time, you can even find social bike rides where people will help you get started. Ask your employer to do what they can to support bike commuting. They may have bike parking and showers already, but if your employer doesn't currently offer that, start asking. The more that they hear, the more likely that they are to offer that. And finally, please support your local bike shops. The money stays in your community. You're supporting small business people, and it's a great way to build a community that can help to ask for more bike infrastructure. So the more people that are out there riding, the more likely we are to get more infrastructure. So I will turn it back over to Siboney.
Okay, I understand that we are about at time. So if people do want to stay around, we are going to do the Q&A and we have a little more info after. I am now going to let Sarah Ann read out some of the questions, and if you have a question now, feel free to enter it in the chat box and you can ask any of our panelists to respond. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for your questions. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them with the limited time, but definitely wanted to make some time for as many of them as we can. So our first question is from Martin, and his question is for Scott. He says, if by building in and then out, you mean from center city out, that implies a departure from the strategy used by Ken Tippett during his tenure with the city. That strategy was based on servicing all parts of the city on equal terms, coupled with the low-hanging fruit opportunities. Could you confirm that is correct?
Hey, Martin, thanks for the question. So I want to reiterate something because I think a lot of the questions that popped up in the chat box kind of dealt with this. And we know that there are pressing bike connectivity needs all across the city. The approach that we have taken recently is that the Uptown CycleLink is currently our #1 priority. That doesn't mean that we are not working on other parts of the city. And I saw questions about connections to places like Hidden Valley. We're working on a Cross Charlotte Trail project that will tie Hidden Valley directly into the Uptown CycleLink. Jamall has shared some great thoughts about connectivity on the west side. We are going to be digging in sometime soon on a west side bike connectivity study. So I don't want folks to think that the Uptown CycleLink is the only thing that we're working on. We just know that getting folks into and across Uptown safely is a big priority for us right now.
Great, thanks, Scott. All right, we've got a question from William. He says, with the Atlanta Beltline, there's been an emphasis on equity and connecting people from all demographics. Can you share where the link will connect people that live along the Beatties Ford Road corridor? It's an area that is in need of intentional connectivity options of all forms.
Yeah, I'll chime in on this one. And you look at the Beatties Ford corridor and you look at all the neighborhoods and some of our great, landmarks in Charlotte, like West Charlotte High School, that are served off that corridor. It's absolutely one that needs to have a comfortable bikeway. As Scott mentioned, we are looking to do more corridor level planning outside of Uptown. I think folks that have been participating in this shift towards all ages and abilities, separated and protected bike lanes, can all attest that it takes a bit more space to create separated bike lanes, and it takes some work and some engagement for all stakeholders involved on a corridor to get folks on board. As Scott mentioned, we look forward to digging into a west side connectivity study, because Beatties Ford and all those neighborhoods, they're really not that far from the CycleLink. All you need to do is get to the 5 Points intersection, and then you can use some of our existing bike lanes on 5th Street And as soon as you take those bike lanes across 77, you're right there in the CycleLink network. Yeah, so we really look forward to taking a deeper dive, especially on that west side where we've got so many neighborhoods that are very close to the CycleLink, and look forward to engaging with all those stakeholders.
Great, thanks, Will. Next question is from Philip. He says, are there any updates to the Shared Streets program? From the times I've been on 2 of the 3 areas involved, they have been getting used. Do we have numbers on their use? And are there any plans to add more streets or areas to Shared Streets?
Yes, I'll take that question as well. So the city has convened a multidisciplinary team to evaluate the Shared Streets program thus far. We do have some initial recommendations for other shared streets, but this evaluation is really looking beyond just the shared streets right now, but looking at how decreasing speed and providing safer options on these neighborhood streets can impact mobility beyond COVID-19. So that's kind of a long answer to say that yes, there are other streets being considered. And if you visit the Shared Streets program webpage on the City of Charlotte website, you can submit comments directly to that Shared Streets technical team that's evaluating the program.
Great. We may have already touched on this question a little bit, but this question's from Kenya. She says, a major problem with cycle infrastructure and connectivity is a lack of connection to low-income areas connected to Uptown, specifically the North Tryon corridor. What is in the plan to connect these areas to the CycleLink? I currently live in Hidden Valley and was a full-time bicycle commuter before moving here. It is not safe for me to bike Uptown now. The number 11 bus route has more bikes on it, which demonstrates that people would bike to Uptown if there was an opportunity.
Yes, and I think this answer is kind of similar to some things that I've mentioned, but in order to truly connect neighborhoods in Charlotte, because in Charlotte we have a unique developed and built environment, we've got to identify entire corridors, beyond just looking at one street. I think the Cross Charlotte Trail is a good example. Obviously that's more Greenway style, but looking at an entire corridor and doing that planning work up front and seeing how we can traverse challenging areas, because in Charlotte, getting from a neighborhood to an ultimate destination is always going to have a challenging spot. So to me, it's more of a focus on creating these corridors now that we're committed and we've got this growing all ages and abilities network in Uptown. We really need to focus on complete corridors that may use more than one street, or maybe a combination of streets with separated bike lanes and greenways to provide that long bicycle connectivity. Folks can ride bikes for multiple miles if it's, if the right conditions are present. A 5-mile bike ride, really isn't that difficult at all, quite enjoyable, as I think most people would agree on this call. But over that 5 miles, you're going to traverse a lot of different contexts within our streets, which is why these advanced planning projects are so important.
Great, thank you. And in the interest of time, I'll just do one more question. This question is from Abby. She says, is the city anticipating any funding issues for these projects resulting from COVID-19, such as stalls from NCDOT and the gas tax?
That's a great question. And NCDOT is kind of its own world and animal, but it's a very worthy one for folks that are interested in advancing bicycling to dive into. We've got a great statewide advocacy organization called Bike Walk North Carolina that advocates for increased funding from our state DOT for bicycle projects. Our current state legislation kind of handcuffs the amount of funding that the NCDOT can allocate towards bicycle projects. It's more focused towards projects that increase motor vehicle capacity. That's something that, I think North Carolina can improve on. As far as city funding, and DOT does have funding shortages that have been well reported in the news, since their policies don't allow them to put much funding towards bicycle projects. There's not a great impact currently, since they weren't allocating much of their budget towards bicycles in the first place. at a local level, all of our projects that are currently funded are moving forward. And I'd encourage folks to watch the city manager's presentation as he presented his budget for this year to City Council and explained all the work that his team and city leadership have done to compile a budget that does not impact the funding for advancing bicycle infrastructure. So go check out that presentation. I think that'll give you a lot of great insight to the work that went into preparing the city's budget this year with all the COVID-19 implications.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your questions. Wish we could have gotten to more of them, but Zib, I'll hand it back off to you.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for those insightful questions and those answers. And I am going to let Mary Catherine speak to you all for a moment.
Oops. Hey guys, I am Mary Catherine Freeman. I am Sustain Charlotte's Development Associate. Thank you so much to everybody that has joined in for this presentation and for all of our speakers. You guys taught me a lot today, and so I'm really grateful that you joined us. I just wanted to give a little highlight about what you guys can do to support Sustain Charlotte's work. I know that there are so many worthy causes right now. Really, I feel like now more than ever, new organizations and causes are popping up every day between everything that's going on with coronavirus and then the consistent need for response with Black Lives Matter. But I did want to just reiterate our need for support here at Sustain Charlotte. We do run solely, in addition, we run our organization off of donations from individuals like you guys. And we could not do the work we do without your support. So there's several different ways that you can give and support us, whether you give on a one-time basis today, or you decide to sign up for our monthly recurring donation. Truly every dollar makes a difference in the work that we're doing and makes it possible. Also, if you're not able to donate yourself, but you think that the company or organization you work for would be interested, you should look into our partnership program or maybe our employee match giving program. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Siboney will include my email in the follow-up email tomorrow. So it's really great to have you guys here. I'm really excited about everything that's going on with biking in Charlotte and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. And now we are wrapping up. Thank you everyone so much for attending our workshop. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. We couldn't have done this without you. And if there's any follow-up questions further, please feel free to email me or reach out. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you guys so much.